When I kind of think about it, I don't think I've ever had an episode where I've had to center it all on a university student until this one. And weirdly enough as well, I kind of end up having to defend universities in general, which is a little bit odd because I haven't been the biggest defender of universities. But I don't know. Either way, it is something that I feel just needs to be done, because whatever the hell this university student, or former university student in this case, said, I think is repeated by a lot of people that don't have a particularly good idea of what it is they're saying, or they don't fully understand what they're denouncing. But before I can get into that, I think I need to do an intro so that I don't look like I lack manners. So, welcome to Breakdown on My Side, your number one breakdown podcast, coming to you from Nairobi, Kenya. The man on the mic is Sir Denver B. This is a much simpler, shorter, less instrumentally, lower edited version of the podcast that I actually used to call Raw Zone. But I guess since I ditched the names around and I'm just sticking to the episode numbers, then, there's a lot less thinking, and, I can keep the discussion smooth, and, I don't have to have multiple sections in the same episode. And in this case, it is a man, or at least a boy, known as Onyango Tate. Now, for those of y'all that, weren't too keen on the internet over the past week from the time this episode comes out, there was a student from Mount Kenya University who was nicknamed Onyango Tate mainly because of how he spoke about the university keeps you in the matrix and you need to leave, and how garbage university is, and how the lecturers are broke and they don't have shit, and you looking up to them is very dumb because they're not gonna get you rich, and you're looking at what it is that's supposed to make you rich. So they're bad role models. Now, I listened to whatever this guy had to say about this entire thing, and I have my thoughts on it, most of which just, point out to the fact that this dude just sounded bitter, probably because he came from an exam that just gave him one in the back end. But let me just play the clip before I can get into my thoughts on the entire thing. So, without further ado...
Exam paper. This is an exam paper you are seeing. So tell me, how is this thing going to make you rich? Okay, you have defined data collection good. I know you are a good definer of terms. Now tell me how is it going to make you rich? I am doing this shit to make my parents happy. I was going to the university to get that degree to make my parents happy. But if you start thinking, how is this going to make you rich? Look at these old bullshit cars. They belong to all your lecturers. Your lecturer is 60 years old and above, driving these shitty cars. And they're your role models. Let me study hard so that I can be like my lecturer. Shut the fuck up. You're never going to be rich. You're not going to be rich until you escape the matrix. I wonder how this shit, defining some terms like theory variables, will make you rich. I just wonder. Do all these stupid people think they're going to be rich by doing this and that?
Okay, so first time I actually saw this clip and I actually listened to it in its entirety, I personally felt like it was a little bit, okay, I don't want to say cringe, but it just felt a little bit weird. Just mostly because it's not what he's saying per se, but it's also how he's saying it, and the fact that I've dealt with shit like this before. Not necessarily in the case of him talking about, like university and the matrix and everything. It's just like, I don't know, 240-ish episodes ago, like when I was doing episode 200, I spoke about this thing where there's a lot of people, because of online media and following people online, have gotten to a point where they are no longer having their own individualized critical form of thinking, but what they're pretty much relying on and using for most times is just buzzwords and secondhand opinions. Like, that's all that I can hear here. Now, I didn't want to give too much of a thought to this entire thing, and I wouldn't have paid too much attention beyond here. But when the news came out that the university actually handed him a suspension, granted it was just one semester suspension, which, I feel like is mostly a slap on the wrist compared to what some other universities around the world would have done, I kind of felt like there was a discussion that needed to be had, because I didn't think that the video itself was that viral in the first place. Up until I went to Twitter and I saw a bunch of dudes who were busy agreeing with whatever the hell this guy was saying and talking about how useless university is. Now, in regards to the whole question of whether university is useful or not, I believe that for the most part, university can be useful, but, most people aren't able to extract the use out of it because, a lot of the lecturers, a lot of the teaching methods, a lot of the information that's passed is very old and very dated, and thus it can hinder quite a number of people, actually the majority of people, from utilizing university to its fullest extent. But even with that said, I do still think that there is use for university, and I actually think that it's a very fun place and a lot of young people should go through university, if not all of them. And it's mostly because I believe that the gains that you get from university are a lot less in the classroom and with books, and a lot more in terms of building character and going through life and, interacting with people and getting, a premium free trial at the good life. But, that's just a me thing. Now, all that said and done, I feel like we do need to have a talk about this thing that a lot of people online refer to as the Matrix. Now, for the most part, since a good chunk of people have spent some time online and have interacted with the character or the videos of the character known as Andrew Tate, then at least you know that the person that uses the word the Matrix more than anyone else is Andrew Tate. And, he used that quite a bit. But I don't think a lot of people actually understood where the whole term the Matrix kind of came from. Because the whole talk of the Matrix wasn't popularized up until the Red Pill community started existing. And for those of you all that don't know who or what the Red Pill community is, they are mostly made up of a lot of the guys or a lot of the people that tend to talk a lot of shit about women today and how, modern women are shit. And they do tend to sound pretty bashful towards women. Now, the Red Pill came to exist as a result of a book known as The Rational Male, which was written by author known as Rollo Tomasi. And the whole premise of it was, you are living in this fantasy where you believed certain things about women and certain things about being a man, but now you get to break out of that fantasy. You get to break out of this sort of matrix by taking the red pill, because this was a concept that was originated by the movie itself known as The Matrix, where there was red pill and blue pill. And red pill was waking up to reality. So that's kind of where it came from. Now, Andrew Tate took the concept of the Matrix and waking up to reality, and he practically used that to sell this idea of becoming rich and becoming successful and getting out of this, boring or miserable 9-to-5 job, or this area where you're broke in life, and make you a bunch of money. But essentially, he was mostly trying to get people to join this online school known as Hustlers University, which had probably about 3 iterations. Last I checked, then it was renamed as The Real University, which, is an online school system teaching you stuff like e-commerce, drop shipping, content management and shit like that. So with all that said, if you actually try to think about what the Matrix actually is, it's pretty much you being told to leave whatever norm or at least normal, comfortable life you're used to, get into the world of possibly being an online contractor, or, possibly a business person or an entrepreneur of sorts, so that you can possibly make a shit ton of money and live life on your terms. Which, in theory, sounds like a great idea up until you realize that there's people that do that and they end up sometimes not moving or possibly even worse off than when they checked in. But I know that there could be a debate that's based off of that, so I don't want to get into it right now. But essentially, that's more or less what a lot of the content creators who are telling you to leave the Matrix are pretty much trying to sell you on. Like, that's what a lot of these Andrew Tate videos that you find flying around are pretty much based off of, because it's usually going to be there as a link in the description and shit. But, that's sort of besides the point. Now, back to the whole story. Now, this guy decides to talk shit about his school and how poorly the lecturers are doing. And he talks about leaving the Matrix. Now, the guy gets kicked out of school for only a semester, which is, like I said earlier on, seemingly a slap on the wrist. But when you kind of think about it, this guy is more or less repeating the same exact shit that other content creators online have done, and it hasn't benefited them as well. Like, you kind of think about it, I doubt there's a content creator that has built a massive following and has preached the whole, you have to get out of the Matrix type shit, and has lasted for very long on whatever platform they're talking on. Like, not unless you're talking about, maybe Rumble or their own self-made platform. But for the most part, they haven't lasted all that long. Does that mean that the Matrix exists? I don't particularly think so. I honestly believe that for the most part, some of the things that they will say alongside that information isn't all that great. But, that's also another discussion for another day. But at the end of it, this guy said a bunch of this shit about his uni, holding the university material, and he ended up being kicked out of school for a semester. If he didn't hold the university material and he said that uni is pointless, he probably wouldn't have been kicked out of school. Like, I don't think this guy actually fully understood the repercussions of what it was that he was doing. Because if he goes in for another class and a lecturer who's seen that video, who might possibly have one of those so-called shitty cars, sees him, the guy will just end up giving him shit treatment. Because he just took a dump on a profession that he's worked most of his life on, or, is spending a good part of his day making money off of. So when you kind of think about it, this just makes things worse for him. And the thing is, like, at the end of the day, I can understand. There's a lot of young guys that will say, uni is pointless because you go through uni and afterwards you don't get a job. And I get that. But it doesn't mean that you have to take a shit on the university and show the university that you're taking a shit. But even with that said, even with all of that put there was something that I did notice from the video. There was the question that he kept on asking, how is it going to make me rich? And I think that's a question that a lot of us have asked ourselves, some of us even asking that question as far back as in high school. The whole, how is this going to make me rich question is a question that a lot of people have asked. And I think this part needs to be said because, there's those of us that have gone through university, so we know it. And there's some who are listening to this podcast who haven't gone through university yet, or there are in university. But here's the thing. When you have that whole question of how is this going to make me rich, I will tell you for a fact, and people who finished university can probably tell you that this is the truest way of looking at it. That question should not be directed at the school or at the lecturer. That question should be directed to yourself. All right. This whole thing of questioning how university is going to make you rich, how the lecturer is going to make you rich. Like, at the end of the day, you're not asking the wrong question. You're just directing it at the wrong people. Because it's not their responsibility to make you rich. That's your responsibility. So when you walk into a marketing class, you have to ask yourself how that class is going to make you rich. And if you can find some way in which it'll make you rich, then go listen to whatever it is that you're supposed to get from that class and implement that shit. If you're in a math class and you're being taught about the internal rate of return, at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself how that is going to make you rich, of which both of those things can actually make you a lot of money if you know how to utilize them. And at the end of the day, that's the most important way to look at this entire thing. Although, even with that said, I don't like the way a lot of people nowadays have this hyper infatuation with making a shit ton of money. Like, people like talking about, flying out to the Maldives on holiday and shit and being financially free and, being able to cover their own bills and buy what they want. But a lot of what people nowadays talk about is just making a shit ton of money. And for the most part, I don't even think that that's particularly important for most people in the actual long run. Because at the end of the day, most people are just trying to get to a position of happiness and financial stability. I don't think you need $100 million to do that. And frankly, I think that most people who wish they had $100 million to try doing that with would probably still not get there even though you gave them $1 billion. So to kind of conclude all of this, let me just say this. Going to university isn't going to guarantee that you'll make $100 million. And that's okay. At the end of the day, university is not supposed to guarantee you money. It's not supposed to put money in your pocket, but it is supposed to equip you with the tools that you can utilize, possibly with a little bit of ingenuity here and there, to make yourself a shit ton of money. Will that happen for everyone who goes to university? No. Does that even happen for most people who go to university? Very, very debatable. But at the end of the day, blaming the university and the fact that you chose to do a course because you wanted to please your parents as the reason for you not being able to find a way to get rich from whatever it is you're doing is just a form of victim mentality where you're willing to blame everyone else but are unwilling to accept that it is you who has not found a way to make a lot of money for yourself. Although, then again, I might be wrong about this entire thing, so I want your thoughts on it. The DMs are open on IG, on Facebook, it is at Breaktime, on Westside, on Twitter, it is at Bagaka the D. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end, and I will catch you guys on the next break.